Hi everybody, my name is Melanie Newman and welcome to our grooming channel. This is Zoe the Moodle. She has featured in a few of our grooming tutorials, but today I'm going to film my entire groom on her. So the most important parts, so you guys learn everything from start to finish. So I'm going to be assessing her coat. So she gets groomed probably every couple of months, so probably every 6 to 8 months. And we've been in lockdown here in Melbourne, so it has been a little bit longer, but we are going to assess her coat together. We are going to do all the pre-grooming before the bath. We are going to do bathing techniques, drying techniques, clipping, using snap-ons, using straight, using curved scissors, using blenders, using thinners, the entire groom. So stay tuned. So let's begin by assessing her coat. So I did say to you guys that she comes in probably every 6 to 8 weeks. When we're not in a lockdown, she does come in a little bit more regularly, but probably the last year it's probably been every 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. Her mum does brush and bath her at home. And does a most amazing job. She has a really, really good coat. So it does brush out quite easy, but we can see she does have some matting around her neck. Because Zoe wears a collar all the time, she does get a lot of matting around her neck area. So I usually clip this area nice and short and blend in that body, just because it's a lot easier for her mum to look after this area at home. And if we have a look at her little legs, her back legs do have some matting in them as well. But we're going to loosen these mats up by brushing out this tail and her sweet little ears. And we will also clip out her little pads and her private areas before the bath. So this is what we do as a pre-groom. Because she does have some matted areas, I'm going to be using the slicker brush with the protective pins to begin with, because I'm going to be brushing over an area quite a few times. I don't want the pins to irritate her skin. And I just would like to loosen up those knots before we pop her in the bath. Zoe does prefer to lay down while I groom her, so I only try and get her up when I need her up, and she is such a relaxed little girl. I think she actually really enjoys the grooming process. So I'm using the Relax Coat Conditioning Spray to help remove any knots and tangles. And I'm going to begin by just checking over these little legs. And I'm not going to remove all the knot, I'm just going to loosen up those heavy knotted matted areas. Good girl. And this one. And we can see through her back legs she has matted areas. So there's a mat here, and then there's a mat up here, and one on her knee. So I'm going to just break it up with my slicker. And you can see when I'm brushing out these little matted areas on her legs that she's not in any pain. If she was in any pain, I would just clip them out, but they're coming out quite easily. And then we'll go through this little notch. I'll wait for her to finish checking herself out. You okay? Yes. And then the mat on her knee area. And I'm not removing the entire mat. I'm just breaking the mat up. So when I've got her in the bath, we can do a little bit more work in these areas. And Good girl, Zoe. And then that's as much as I would do before the bath, just making sure that that matting is all separated. And then we'll do a bit more work and really massage the conditioner in those knots while she's in the bath. And we're moving on to her tail, but before I begin brushing her tail out, I'm going to remove the dead hair that is in this slicker, because this dead hair may get caught on the healthy hair and feel like there's more knots when in fact there's not any knots. So using our coat conditioning spray through this tail, and then I'm going to go through sections at a time. And brushing with the direction of the coat growth. She does have some matting near the base of her tail, but what I'm going to do is clip that nice and short, because this does get quite knotty often. So to avoid upsetting Zoe, because she is just such a great dog to groom, I'm going to clip this nice and short so it won't upset her at all. And in between brushing, I like to feel to see where the knots are. So instead of just brushing blindly and just thinking where the knots are, I can actually feel while I'm brushing. And that feels nice and broken up. Good girl, Zoe. And then we can see this is all the dead hair that would be causing those mats in that back leg. So always checking our brush and removing that dead hair. And there's lots of bits of grass in there and lots of dirt, but we can see that it's actually soft, dull hair, so that means that it's dead, and that's what's causing the tangles and the mats. So I'm going to try a 5F on that neck area that's matted. So I want to see if the blade will actually go underneath that matting. If it doesn't, I'm going to drop the blade down to a 7F. Good girl, Zoe. So moving her ear forward. And find a little spot where the blade can go underneath the matting. And then just gently guide that blade through. Yeah, it seems to be going through. So number 5F is around 6mm. So that's how much is going to be left on that neck area. And popping her head upwards and making sure when we clip that neck area that we're always clipping outwards, because this is a danger point. Good girl. And it can feel a little bit uncomfortable for them when they do have matted areas on their body when we are clipping. And this is where her collar is sitting. So I'll just turn those clippers off, and we can see where the collar has been sitting because it is discoloured and is a grey colour. So from where the buckle is. And then just working through that mat. And there we go. And her other side. So finding an opening where there's no matting, and that's where we begin, like that's our start point. Moving that ear forward. And coming in front of that matting area. And just working through that mat. And they're coming off pretty easy. Good girl. And this is her neck completely clipped out, so it's nice and clear and clean for when she goes home and she puts her collar back on. So with the rest of her body, I'm going to be using a number 4F, and that leaves about 9.5 millimeters of coat on her. And we are coming into the warmer weather in Melbourne, so I do like to clip her body shorter, but leave her little legs a little bit longer. So she still has quite matted areas throughout her body, but I'm just going to work this blade through those areas and just take my time as I'm clipping her down. And when I do go through those matted areas, I'm pulling her skin quite tight and nice and firm, because I don't want any skin getting caught up in these blades. So just pulling the skin nice and tight, and then just gently allowing that blade to go through those matted areas. As I said before, she does like to sit down and be groomed. She's quite a relaxed little girl. So I'm leaving her legs nice and long and nice and full, but clipping down her body. In her flank area, and as I go through her flank area, I'm actually going to pop my hand behind her flank and keep my blade nice and flat and go over that area. And always going with the direction of the coat growth. And coming down to the back of her back leg, and I usually clip to the point of where her leg bends, and then just skimming off the sides of those legs. And her other side. So just allowing that blade to work through those little knots. And again, pulling that skin nice and firm, and not forcing the blade through, but just allowing the blade to work its magic and cut that hair. And when I'm clipping through matted areas, I do like to just do small sections at a time, so I'm not forcing it through and doing one long clipper length. I'm just taking my time and allowing that blade to just work through step by step. So only a little bit at a time, and just taking my time. And moving towards the front of her. So again, just allowing that blade to work through and not forcing it. And this is a danger point all through this area, and especially her underarms. So I'm actually going to drop to a 5F. And then just gently work through her underarms, and just allowing that blade to cut that hair, not forcing it. Lifting that little leg and coming to her underline. And I've still got my 5 blade on because I want this area nice and short. So her body is all complete, so I'm not going to do any more clipping on her body. So this is my pre-clip before the bath. I'm just going to clip out her little pads and her sanitary areas. I'm not going to be clipping in the inner corners of her eyes. I'm going to be using my thinners after the bath. I'm using my little Sheer Magic battery trimmers. I'm just going to remove all the hair in her little pads, and I like to really remove a lot of the hair because she does live on property, so she does get some grass seeds and little burrs and things like that stuck in her little pads, so just making it easier for her mum to be able to see and identify and remove the objects as they get caught in her little feet. And I'm going to pop a number 10 on my clippers just to clip out her sanitary area and her little rear end. And coming in and following the direction of the coat growth on her little rear end. And while I've got her here, I'm going to use our number 5 blade to come up at the back of her tail for where that matting was when we were brushing through her. And then that is the matting that we've removed, so we don't need to brush that out because I didn't want her to feel uncomfortable or I didn't want to hurt her. Okay, she's nice and clean now. And now her nails. I file all dogs' nails down just so they don't scratch their owners or scratch any kids or furniture, floorboards, anything like that. And her little back feet. I find the back nails are usually a little bit shorter, especially for dogs who are quite active, because they are pushing off or running around a lot. Good girl. Good girl. Good girl. You like those nails? Good girl. Okay, so she is ready for the bath, but before I take her to the bath, I just want to clean up my table and make sure I've removed all my equipment, because when I've moved her from the bath back to the table to dry her, I don't want any equipment on the table for when I begin to dry her, because I don't want my grooming tools to then fall on the floor. So it's better to prep your area before you begin grooming. So I've removed all the equipment off the table, and I'm going to pop my towel on the table for when I bring her from the bath. So what the towel does, she thinks it's a mat, but what the towel does is when I'm drying her, instead of the water going onto my grooming table, it's going to go onto the towel and not back onto her, so it's going to speed up our drying time. So we have Miss Zoe in the bath, so I'm just going to rinse her down. I'm going to be bathing Zoe in the Relax collection. The Relax collection is formulated for breeds with curly coats. I'm going to be shampooing her twice. And working that shampoo in her little paws and in those longer furnishings. Working the shampoo through her little body. And rinsing that first lot of shampoo off. Pop her head up and rinse it off around her little head. And I'm going to be using the Purify Scrub and working that through her body. This will help just remove any pollutions or toxins in the skin and the coat. And just gently rinse that off. And I'm going to follow the scrub with a Purify shampoo. So I'm using the Relax conditioner and working that really well into her furnishings. And while the conditioner is on her furnishings, I'm just going to use a slicker. So I have slickers for the bath and slickers for the grooming table. This is my slicker for the bath, and I'm just going to work through her furnishings. Working that conditioner in and giving her a little bit of a massage. So she is all rinsed off, and I'm going to get her towel and towel dryer. I always like my dogs to shake because it gets rid of a lot of water really, really fast and efficiently. Dogs are really great at shaking water off themselves. I'm going to be using the high velocity dryer to dry her today, and then I'm going to use a stand dryer. And when I use a stand dryer, I'm going to brush her coat at the same time. But before I dry her, I'm going to pop some Relax coat conditioning spray through her coat. And the coat conditioning spray will help detangle as we're drying and help separate those knots. I'm definitely going to use a happy hoodie on Zoe today because we are using the high velocity dryer and it can be quite loud. Good girl. So pop that towel back around her. Sit down. So as I'm drying her with the high velocity dryer, I'm going to try and keep the towel on her at all times. So the water then goes on the towel and not back on her. So this will speed up our drying time. So I'm going to be using the stand dryer to brush out all her legs, quickly brush out her body, her ears, her face and her tail. And I'm going to be using our Flexi Slicker. And the knots are just falling out. And there are all the little knots and tangles. Come on, Zoe, we haven't finished yet. Her coat is not free now, so we have removed all those little knots and tangles, any little matted areas, and it feels amazing. So it's standing up nicely, it's got nice volume. So I'm going to re-clip her body, and giving a dog a second clip, so a second go over with the clippers, will help achieve a nice even clip. So making sure we get all that coat nice and even and we don't have any little tufts of hair. And when I come to her back legs, I'm actually going to skim off those legs because I want nice parallel lines from our rear profile. So getting rid of these big pants that are hanging off this hip area and this thigh area. So I'm just skimming over this coat. So we can see that nice leg is coming straight down. And as I'm coming off that thigh, I'll just move her tail. And as I'm coming off that hip and down that thigh, I'm just skimming off that leg. And then coming off her hip and then skimming straight down. So I'm not coming in hard against her hock. I'm coming in hard and then off around her knee area, and then I'm skimming off. Just pick this hair back up. So straight off. And it helps to find a mark on the table where you can skim to. I'm picking up that leg and doing the inside. So I'm not coming straight into that hock area, I'm just skimming straight off. And this is just getting a lot of the bulk off. And it also helps shape our legs. And then let's do the same for the front. So coming off that shoulder, off that elbow, and then straight down. And making sure her legs are nice and straight when I'm doing this. So I'm just coming straight down, just skimming off that shoulder area. Lifting up her little front legs and coming from her rib cage around to her underline. And I'm actually going to come in the opposite direction on her underline so it stays nice and tidy and nice and short. And then getting it nice and even by going with. Okay, good girl. So I've clipped her entire body and now I'm going to use a snap-on over her legs, and the snap-on I'm using is a 22mm and this is a Oster snap-on, and I've popped a 30 blade underneath this snap-on. I'm going to run the snap-on over her legs, so this will give a nice length, and all we'll have to do is blend in from where we've clipped with our 4 blade into the snap-on areas on these legs. And her front legs, good girl. If we didn't brush out all the knots on her legs, there is no way we could get this snap-on through, because a snap-on is actually a comb attachment. So as we're clipping through these legs, it's combing the coat at the same time. So if it snags on a knot or a mat, it just won't go any further. So when we're using a snap-on, we need to ensure that we've prepped the coat correctly and there's no knots and tangles. And when I'm using the snap-on on her legs, I'm always going with the direction of the coat growth. She's too busy looking at something over in the corner. Good girl, Zoe. Good girl. Once I've used the snap-on on those legs, I'm going to scissor around her little feet. So working from the base upwards, because we want nice, round, cute little teddy bear feet. It's always a challenge to make her stand up. She's more comfortable laying down and being groomed, but sometimes we need to make sure she's standing up. And I always like to keep combing, and I'm using my fine tooth comb. So keep combing that hair to get out all those little hairs so our scissor work is nice and even and neat and tidy. There she goes, more comfortable laying down. Classic Zoe. Combing the hair to the side and scissoring towards her prosternum, so not towards her underarm, towards her prosternum. And scissoring straight up. And then I'm going to pop her up. Come on, Zoe, you can do it. And comb all her hair up on her legs. And then use my blenders and blend in our clipper work. So from our number 4 F blade into our snap-on on our legs, so we have a nice transition and we don't have a line, so the hair is nice and even coming into that leg. And the key is to continually comb all that hair up. The more you comb, the more even your scissor work will be and the better your finish will be. And she's got a little knot in here. So I'll try and remove that. It's only small. Good girl. Yep, all gone. So comb that back up and there's no more knot. Combing up the back of her front leg and using my blenders to come straight up that leg. Back foot. So scissoring the base first. And then comb out the hock area, and from the base I'm following it straight up to the hock and making sure all our scissor work and clipper work is nice and even. And then pop that foot on the ground and comb this foot out, so comb all those little hairs out and then scissor the front of her foot. And again, where we have our clipper work on a number 4 versus our snap-on, I want to make this transitional line nice and even so it flows into each other. So comb all those little hairs up, and then using my blenders, I'm going to come along and just scissor the longer hairs into the shorter hairs. So I actually don't want to scissor where I've clipped the number 4 any shorter. It's just scissoring and blending the two into one. And constantly combing up. Just going to hold her tail out of the way. And the best way to check to see if our work is nice and even is from the rear profile. So I like to move around the dog. I don't like to move the dog too much when they're comfortable. So I'm facing her rear end now, and I can see from the rear profile if it's nice and even and we've got a nice parallel line coming off her hip down to her little feet. And that goes for the insides of the back legs as well. So comb everything up and out, and then just come straight down. And while I'm at her rear profile, I'm just going to scissor in from where we've clipped her little bum and scissor and make sure we've got no harsh lines in this area and it's nice and neat and tidy. Oh, there we go. Come on, Dal. Good girl. So I'm happy with that transition from our clipper work into our snap-on leg. Now I'm going to continue with her other two legs. And don't forget, when we're combing up those legs and we're using our blenders to come down, we want a nice parallel line coming off our shoulder into our foot, which sometimes can be hard if we've got a lot of matting in our shoulder area and then we don't in our legs. We can have, sometimes we can pinch in the elbow a little bit, but I think it's not too bad with Zoe. She did have a little bit of matting in that area, but it's coming together pretty well. And don't forget their little underarm area. And blending in our transitional line. When we're blending in a transitional line, we need to keep our hand and our arm quite still so we get a nice even finish on that leg. So as we're scissoring around this leg with our blenders, I'm keeping it nice and still so we don't get any holes as we're scissoring or blending. Keeping a nice steady hand as I'm going up and down the insides of the back legs and constantly using my comb. Give one final cross check. I've completed her body and her legs, so now I've just got her pretty little head left. So I'm going to run the yellow snap-on, the yellow Oster snap-on, and that's a 16mm, and I'm going to come in reverse on the top of her skull and of her cheeks, but I'm not going to come into her muzzle area. So coming at the back of her occiput and then straight off her skull. And I'm being very careful that the last tooth of the snap-on doesn't take any of her ear hair. And I'm moving her ear backwards and holding her muzzle with my thumb, and my index finger is securing her ear. And I'm coming straight into her cheek and coming straight off. So in and straight off. I'm not coming into her muzzle at all. So I keep going over the same area, and this ensures that we've got all the little hairs and our clipper work is nice and neat and nice and even. And then her other side. straight off that cheek area. And remember, not coming into her muzzle. And then I'm going to cross check, so going back over her skull. And this just bulk reduces a lot of the coat off and gives, and it gives a little bit of shape through that face. And cross check that cheek. Using my thinners, I'm going to remove all the hair in front of the inner corner of her eye. And I prefer to use thinners because it gives her appearance and her expression, it makes it a lot softer, so it's not as harsh. I feel like if I clip this area, it's a really harsh expression, and I like her expression to be nice and soft. And in front of the inner corner of her eyes, I like to go against the grain of the hair, so against how the hair grows. And then in between her eyes, I prefer to go with. And our next step is going to be scissoring from her mouth, from her nose, and coming up into her ear. So using my curves, I'm coming around and then straight up into the front of her ear. So I've moved her ear backwards and just comb out any little hairs. So from this side, because it's my opposite side, I'm going to scissor out all the little hairs in front of her little ear canal. And then I'm going to come, it's all right, back into this muzzle. So the opposite. So let's trim her fringe. So our scissors on a 45-degree angle and going to the outer corner of the eye. So where we've scissored and clipped our cheek, so there's no harsh scissor lines, it's just a nice transition into her cheek. And then comb everything upwards and remove all those little loose hairs. And using our blenders, I'm just going to soften off the top of this skull, so just so it's not so flat, because I like it nice and round. And using the blenders to soften off that expression from using the curved scissors on her fringe. And now we're going to join her two sides of her muzzle and take off the middle area, so her lower jaw. And I like this to come nice and round into the sides of her muzzle. Once we've got the length, I'm then going to use my thinners to then soften all this scissor work. So I'm going to be using my scissors with the direction of the coat growth because I want to blend. And because her coat kind of drops around her muzzle, like it's a lot straighter than the rest of her coat, the blending technique would be going with the direction of her coat. Move her ear backwards and blend in her cheek area. And constantly comb that hair up. And this will make sure our scissor work and our blending work is really smooth and nice and plush and nice and even. And we won't have any harsh scissor lines or scissor marks. Just want to remove a little bit more hair from her eyes. Good girl. Good girl. And just tidy up her jawline. And I like to just blend and show more of a definite line from her head into her ears. So I just like to tidy this up and also blend our transitional line from where we've clipped her, the back of her skull, into our clipped area where we did the number 5 to remove that matting. I'm blending in her ears, so I'm just going to bulk reduce a little bit of this coat at the back of her ears. So bulk reducing is coming up into the coat. And removing some of this bulk. Using my blenders to scissor the bottoms of her ears. And this gives a nice soft edge, so it's just not hard straight across. So a nice soft appearance. Good girl. And her other ear. So her clipper work, her scissor work, her everything is all complete. So I just like to give her a spray with cologne, and that's with the Relax cologne. Oh, thank you, darling. Thank you, I know. She is one of these dogs, and as groomers, you have your favorites and you think, oh my God, I could easily have this dog. She is one of these dogs. I just adore her. Like, I love her like she's my own. Yes, I do. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video from start to finish. That is my grooming process with Miss Zoe, and I think she came up really well, considering how many knots she had, how many bits of grass were in her. Yeah, she had a lot going on because of the lockdowns in Melbourne, but she looks just fabulous now. So, not on camera, darling. So, if you guys have any questions, pop them in the comments below and I will definitely get back to you. And I will pop all the equipment I've used in today's grooming session in the description below. So, check out all that as well. And yeah, until next time, happy grooming, guys.